So today we're going to talk about a man often called the father of modern African literature, Chinua Achebe. But really, he's the guy who taught the lion how to write.
You know, this quote from Achebe, it's just so powerful. It's really the key to understanding everything he did. It's not just a clever saying, right? It's a call to action. It's saying, hey, if you've been silenced, you have to grab the pen, you have to tell your own story, to take back your own history.
All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about that lion. This is the story of how one man, with just a pen, didn't just write a book. He completely redrew the literary map of the entire world.
Okay, so to really get just how huge Achebe's impact was, you first have to picture the world he was writing in. I mean, it was a world where Africa's story wasn't really Africa's. It was almost always told by outsiders and for outsiders.
Think about books like Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Before Achebe, that's what a lot of people thought of when they thought of Africa. It was this dark continent, this primitive stage for some European guy's adventure. And Achebe, well, he called it out. He famously called Conrad a thoroughgoing racist because the book treated African people like they weren't even real humans, just props in someone else's story.
So what did Achebe do? He didn't just write a fiery essay or give a speech, no. His response was a full-blown novel. And this novel, it wasn't just a book. It was an act of cultural resistance that was about to change everything.
And that book, wow, it was revolutionary. See, it wasn't another one of those tired stories about savage Africa that needed saving. For the first time, really, on a global stage, here was a book showing the complex, rich, functioning society of the Igbo people, told from their perspective, from the inside out. It wasn't a story about the Europeans arriving. It was about the incredible world that was already there long before they showed up.
And guess what? The world was listening. The impact was just immense. We're talking more than 10 million copies sold. To put that in perspective, this book became a core text in schools all over the planet. The lion story, it was finally being heard, loud and clear.
And that's the key, right? This isn't just a story set in Africa. It's a story that is Africa. It's an expression of its soul, its history, its culture, its entire way of thinking. The perspective is from an Igbo village looking out at the world, not from the outside world looking in. That changes everything.
Which leads to a really interesting question, doesn't it? How did he pull it off? How did Chinua Achebe write a novel in English but make it feel so completely and authentically Igbo?
Well, a huge part of his genius was this technique called transliteration. Now, that's a fancy word, but what it means is he wasn't just translating words. That's the easy part. He was translating a whole culture. He managed to embed the very soul, the rhythm, the entire worldview of the Igbo language and its oral tradition into the English language.
This proverb is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. By weaving these kinds of sayings, these bits of oral tradition, right into the story, he does something incredible. He doesn't just tell you the Igbo people have a rich, complex culture. He makes you feel it. He literally bent the English language, forcing it to carry the weight and the wisdom of an Igbo worldview.
And all of this brings us to a really fascinating, even controversial point. The big debate surrounding Achebe, his choice to write in English. I mean, think about it. The very language of the colonizer.
Why would he do that? A lot of his peers, other giants of African literature, they completely disagreed with this. They argued that to truly decolonize, you had to ditch the colonizer's language. For them, writing in English was basically giving in.
And you can see this split perfectly when you look at Achebe versus another literary titan, Ngugi wa Thiong'o from Kenya. Ngugi famously gave up English altogether to write in his native language, Gikuyu. He believed it was the only way to truly free your mind. But Achebe, he saw it totally differently. For him, English wasn't a cage, it was a weapon.
Achebe's thinking was, I'm going to master their language. I'm going to challenge their narrative on their own turf. He realized he could reach a global audience and prove, in the language of international power, that everything Europe thought it knew about Africa's past was just wrong.
So what's the big takeaway here? What's the lasting impact of this literary lion? Well, it's so much bigger than just his own books. See, he didn't just write a novel. He kicked the door wide open for a whole continent of writers to walk through.
Yeah, Achebe didn't just tell his own story. He literally built the stage for so many others. He was the editorial advisor for the super influential African Writers series, and through that, he helped launch a new generation of writers, people who would become global stars in their own right. He started a movement, really, proving that African stories aren't just a niche, they are absolutely essential to world literature.
And that's why this matters so much, especially for the Igbo people, and really for Black people all over the world. What he did was nothing short of a rehabilitation of dignity, a dignity that had been so battered and bruised by colonialism. He didn't just create a new voice, he helped restore a powerful, ancient one that had been silenced.
So, in the end, Chinua Achebe took the colonizer's language and he owned it. He turned it into a tool to reclaim the narrative, to make sure that the history of the hunt wouldn't just be the hunter's story anymore. He gave the lions their historian. And I guess the question he leaves for all of us is, who's writing the stories for the lions of today?